coming out. This very important conversation. We are going to get started, waste no more valuable time. My name is Dr. Marvin Spiller, and we have a star-studded panel that we will introduce shortly. And so without no further ado, I'm going to have the panelists introduced. So on behalf of Illinois Central College, Manual Academy, we welcome you.
Thank you, Dr. Spiller. My name is Michelle Wakehorst. I'm with the Criminal Justice Department at Illinois Central College. It is my humble duty to introduce this wonderful panel. As I do so, if you could just maybe motion so the audience can know who you are. First, we have State Representative Jihan Gordon Booth. Next, Peoria City Manager Patrick Urick. Next, Federal Public Defender for the Central District of Illinois, Thomas Patton. Reverend Devereaux Hubbard of the St. Paul Baptist Church. Next, Professor William Feipel of the ICC Economics Department. Dr. Anthony White of the ICC Criminal Justice Department. Professor Nick Graff of the ICC Criminal Justice Department, also former Chief of Police of Morton, Illinois. Next, Peoria City Councilwoman Beth Jensen. Next, Bradley University Associate Professor and Director of Social Work, Dr. Portia Adams. Next, Journal Star Executive Editor Dennis Anderson. Next, Peoria Fire Chief Chuck Loss. Next, Officer Demario Boone of Peoria Public Schools. And also with us is community member Ryan Lowry. Woo! There we go. And our moderator tonight is Dr. Marvin Spiller, Dean of Social Sciences and Public Services at ICC. Welcome everybody, enjoy the evening.
Over the last couple of years, there have been a number of flashpoints around the country that have exposed the racial divide in our country. And a lot of those flashpoints are centered around issues of law enforcement, but there also have been issues around economics, social issues, political issues. And tonight, we hope to shed some light on those realities with a particular focus on what's happening here in our city. Last month, or week rather, a report was released by an organization called 24/7 Wall Street that, as you probably heard, identified Peoria as the #1 worst city for African Americans to live in. That report cited a number of sort of social economic indicators to make the point. While that was a statistical account of our city, we're going to discuss the human realities that give sort of credence to those numbers or challenge those numbers. Our intent here is not to point fingers, demonize. Certainly there's plenty of blame to go around, but we hope to see where we have come, see what got us here, and more importantly, where do we go from here? And so we are hoping to have a very solution-based conversation about some of the challenges that are confronting our city right now as it pertains to race, inequality, and policing. To get us started, Mr. Ryan Lowry will give us a personal account of his experiences living, growing up, thriving in his city that he called home.
Thank you. So, to introduce me as a community member, I'd like to introduce myself as the newest member of the Cubs bandwagon, okay? So, however, soon as they start losing, I am going to promptly get off of the wagon. Just for the record. Okay, so the numbers tell us that Peoria is the worst place for African Americans, and to some that came as a shock, to others not so much. But let me give you a statistic. 99% of statistics are biased, inaccurate, and unsubstantiated by those who quote them, including that statistic that I just made up. Nobody wants to hear statistics, so I'm not going to bore you with any real statistics regarding the racial disparities in this city. We don't need numbers to tell us that we have a problem, because we know this. We know that a certain group of people are more likely to be born in poverty than other groups of people. We know that a certain group of people are less likely to have the opportunities to escape the vicious cycle of generational poverty than other groups. We know that a certain group of people are less likely to have access to the resources required to make that escape, and that a certain group of people are more likely to squander the resources that they do have for lack of education, mentorship, and their own fiscal responsibility. We know that a certain group of people are more likely to be involved in crime, both as the victims and as the perpetrators, and that that same group of people is more likely to be arrested, charged, convicted, and sentenced to longer prison terms than members of other groups who commit similar crimes. We don't need statistics to tell us which group it is. Does anybody not know which group of people I'm referring to? You? You don't know? Okay. Well, you'll learn. We know that there's a problem. We know the root cause of the problem. And if you don't know the root cause of the problem, I'm sure Dr. Spiller would be happy to give you a lesson in American history, but that's not why we're here. We're not here to discuss history or the ideologies or the systems that created the current circumstance. We're here to discuss the issues that we face today and how we can overcome them. We know that these issues don't start with the people in Peoria, the people in this city, this state, or even in this country. These are universal issues, but we're not here, of course, to save the world. We're here to discuss Peoria, Illinois, and the people who call this city their home. So we should ask ourselves, is it even possible to make it so that Peoria is immune to the issues of race and inequality in the areas that affect our lives the most? Is it conceivable that a young person living in the 1st District can have access to the resources and opportunities of those living in the 5th District? Or to even make progress towards that ideal? And what sacrifices are we personally willing to make in order to make that happen? Of course, we will probably never stop people from coming up with reasons to prejudge, hate, and fear others who are unlike themselves. However, what we can do is ensure that the laws, policies, and systems by which our lives are governed are fair and equitable. You notice I said equitable and not equal, because historically we've struggled with our interpretation and definition of the word equal. But I digress. So what can we do as lowly citizens and public servants? What platform do we really have to affect positive change in these areas? Do we have such a platform? We can vote. We can join organizations, many of which are doing great work in the city. But then what? Let's say we get the right person elected to every public office and we get every organization in the city to rally behind the cause. What then would we say our cause would be? What would the end result of the cause be? And what reasonable and objective measure will we have to determine progress and success of the cause? I don't have the answers to these questions. If I did, I'd probably run for president. And I'm not qualified to run for president because I don't have any political experience, and there's like no way that you can be considered a presidential candidate with no political experience. But again, I digress. I'm not a politician or a pastor or a professor or anyone special for that matter. I'm merely a person who was born in this city, who went to this high school and lives in this zip code. And since I've chosen to make this city my home, I care about the city, the future of the city, and the people with whom I share it. So I'd like to talk today about what we can do to make Peoria a great place to live for all of its residents from districts 1 through 5 in every zip code. I look forward to hearing your questions and your comments. and insight from the distinguished panel here. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought it was important to start with that human experience. And just to give you some context, U.S. Census data report that the poverty rate in Peoria is 22.3%. The U.S. average poverty rate is 13.5%. With regard to income, the median income for the average family of 4 here in Peoria for African Americans is $26,311. The average family income for a family of 4 for a white family is $54,652. The unemployment rate for African Americans in the city is 15.6%. The unemployment rate for white citizens here in Peoria is 8.3%. The incarceration rate for African Americans is 9 times higher than that of their white counterparts. African Americans make up 26% of Peoria's population. Just to give you some context. Now these are the numbers, but I understand that Patrick, our city mayor, you have something to say about those numbers.
Really, I just want to add a little bit of context to those numbers. Recently, I put together a report back to the council that talked about that. And as Dr. Spiller said, and I'll start with the first point being the incarceration rates. When the 24/7 Wall Street report came out, they were using statewide incarceration data and just applying that to our region. So that figure is really a figure of that comes from the statewide incarceration data. So in Illinois, what we have is a situation where blacks are 9 times more likely to be in prison than whites. I think that's the first point. The second point is that the 24/7 report uses regional data to look at this. And the point that I made to the council Tuesday night when we had a brief discussion about this, and I'm going to give a larger presentation on this at our next council meeting, is that when you're using regional data, and then we talk about this in terms of the city, there's 265,000 people that live outside of the city of Peoria in this region. And if we talk about it simply as a city issue, we're letting those 265,000 people off the hook from having any ownership over some of this discussion. And we need to have this at a large level. Actually, ICC's catchment area is a lot bigger than just the metro area, but we need to have this as a regional discussion so that we can talk about solutions. Because there are stark differences in zip codes. And it's not just zip codes between the city of Peoria, between 61605 and the north side of the city of Peoria. When you look at the affluence in Washington, or you look at the affluence in Morton, or you look at the affluence even in small zip codes like Lake Camelot out in rural Peoria County. What we've seen over the last 40 years has been a migration from the middle class of all races have left the city of Peoria and have moved out to other parts of the region. So our population has declined in the last 40 years as a city, and the regions has declined slightly, not quite as much, but we've seen a lot of dispersal outside of the central part of the city. So we need to frame this discussion in that light. That really what we need to look at is how can we as a region, and everyone in the community, everyone that, you know, right now in Peoria, there's probably 40,000 people that work inside the city of Peoria every day that don't live here. So they're coming in, they're migrating in to work. They don't get to just turn off this problem when they leave Peoria and in their rearview mirror. So I think that's something that we have to look at as well.
Thank you. And so just to be clear, I'm going to have a seat here so that everyone's not looking behind their back. So what do you say to an African-American young man or woman living on the Peoria South Side who see these numbers, and while they can appreciate the critique of the methodology of the data, but their day-to-day lived experiences reflect that of unemployment, poverty, incarceration, high incarceration rate, and so forth?
I would follow up with that and just say that I recognize the fact that by pointing out that this is a regional issue, that if you want to put that human face on it, correct? It doesn't affect that directly. That person is still dealing with challenges that many others in this region don't face, many others in the city don't face. But it becomes an issue as I'm looking at it as from the city administration standpoint. It's how do we marshal the attention of the community to address these issues so that we can address it appropriately. There's a lot of things that the city has been doing in the heritage neighborhoods of our city, in the older part of the city. We've been working with the building trades, the NAACP, to put more minorities into the construction trades. It's been a program, we've had some great success there. We've increased the number of minorities in the construction trades by 56% in partnership with ICC. That's another entity that we've been working with. But we also have been working with the NAACP and trying to diversify our workforce, and really working with and the fire chief can talk about this, but looking to try and diversify the workforce to make it more reflective of the community that we live in. We know that we have 26% of the population is African American, but we also know that total minorities make up 40% of the population of the city of Peoria. So we've set some pretty aggressive benchmarks for that to try and increase and diversify our workforce. And we're working hard to do that. Our first year out of the gate, we didn't quite get there in terms of the stretch goal that we set, but we're moving in the right direction to hire people into the police and fire service that look like the community. So we're also doing a number of programs inside the older part of the city to help to address neighborhood issues. The council, as they prioritize their work, this is one of the areas that they want to see us focus on. They want to make sure that our neighborhoods are attractive, that we have good housing stock, that we have neighborhoods that are safe, neighborhoods that are clean. We're investing this year in this upcoming budget year, if council passes this in the next council meeting, the budget, we're looking at a significant investment in vacant lot maintenance to try and make sure that the neighborhoods don't look so overgrown and unkempt, so that we can work on that to try and address the issues of safety in the neighborhoods as well, because that becomes a safety issue in the neighborhoods. So the city is trying to do on a number of fronts, whether it's employment, whether it's neighborhoods, whether it's the maintenance of our infrastructure. We're really looking to try and address that. We know we're going to be embarking on a $200 million fix to our stormwater system inside the older part of the city. It's probably going to take us 20 years of time or 18 years to invest in that effort to do that. But we're going to be touching a lot of streets in the South Side. We all know we're here tonight to talk about the challenges that we face when we see disinvestment in neighborhoods. And this is an opportunity, while it's mandated, and we have an environmental mandate to do this, it's allowing us to then move towards trying to reinvest back in the South Side. So over the next 18 years, we're going to be putting a lot of resources into the infrastructure of the South Side as well.
Okay. Professor Feifel.
Good, I want to tell her.
Okay. Can you help us understand? Okay.
I'm answering his question.
Okay.
Because you asked him, what would you say to a young person on South Side of Peoria, who looks at a world that has only the most bleak possible outcomes for him? Well, I haven't talked to anybody from the South Side of Peoria lately, but I did talk to Kuma from the Caribbean, came to ICC on a sports scholarship. He plays soccer, not basketball or football. And he sat down and said he'd been getting cookie cutter information. What to do with his life, didn't know, wasn't sure he should stay in the States or what. He said, you seem to be smart. Tell me, what would you tell me about my future? And I had to sit down with him and think, okay, he's from the Caribbean. What do I say to him? I don't know. This is strange. I haven't had anybody ask me that question for a long time. And so I started doing stuff, and I asked him, so what skills have you got? What can you do? Well, obviously soccer. But you're not going to be a pro, are you? You're not Ronaldo. You're not Messi. He said, no. So I said, you can do business? Can you do math, business? Are you interested in that? Because sports soccer teams have business managers. Are you interested in physical work? Physical therapy? Every soccer team has a physio who will take care of the physical problems of the team. How about sports management, sports advertising? Do you have those skills? See, in econ, they'll tell you, you have to have, oh man, fancy words now, marketable skills. You have to have skills you can sell. What will people buy that you have to give them? And you have to look inside of yourself. I can't tell you what your marketable skills are, what your skills are. They're going to be different. What do you have that you can sell in the world and make enough money to live on well? If I were you, I'd be scared to death. School, college, $100,000 loans, how are you going to pay it off? What are you going to do to make the money to pay it back? And do you really want to do horrible things that you're really bored with just to make the money to do that? What have you got that you can use, that you're willing to use, sell yourself, and support yourself? I don't know what those things are, but I think with some help, we all can sit down and give you that advice. Now, next question. Sorry, it's just, we talk all the time.
When we think about that young man, I mean, what is that young man up against? I mean, what is the economy that young man is likely to enter in today that perhaps his father or grandfather?
Well, first of all, in his case, he's bright. He's really good at what he does. He can do whatever he wants to. He's bright enough. And I'll tell you, if you're black and are bright, articulate, can do some numbers, banks want you. Businesses want you. They need people to talk to African American communities. They need people to be loan officers, to lend money across those lines, to break down redlining. They need what he has, if he can put it together. And so he has an advantage over the rest of you. If you were a female, okay, I can tell you the number of females in an econ class are 1 out of every 1,000. And if it's a black female, it's 1 out of every 10,000. And so that's a monopoly position in a marketplace that makes them rank first. Okay. If you can remember that, see, it's always best if you have a marketable skill to find a niche that no one else is doing. Okay. Then you're the only one.
Okay. Representative Gordon, as you hear the realities of what's happening on Peoria South Side, you hear what our city manager proposing. Certainly it sounds promising that the amount of money that will be going to be pumped into the community, we talking about over an 18-year period, we expect to see some changes. But what do we do in the meantime? What's your reaction?
First, let me start off by saying thank you, Ryan, for such an eloquent introduction. Ryan not only is a father, a former manual student that graduated from here, but what he failed to share with everyone is that he's also, he came back here to Peoria to make it life with his family after graduating from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign with a degree in engineering, one of the top engineering schools in the country. And I think that it's important to share that distinction because there are thousands of bright young black men, thousands of bright young black women that live in this community that don't get the opportunities. They don't have the same things afforded to them as maybe individuals that go to schools that are not necessarily within the city limits. That's not to say that there are not fantastic schools right here in Peoria, because there are. But we also know that there are schools that are doing more with less. They're underfunded. They don't have the same resources as other schools within this region. So those teachers are expected to, or those educators are expected to deal with not only the socioeconomic issues that those children are coming to school with every day, but they're also expected to teach in an environment that isn't always the best of conditions. And when we talk about socioeconomics, we have to be mindful that this idea and this concept that everyone has this equitable situation, that's a fallacy, right? Because we know when we look at the data, we can talk about the methodology, which we have discussed ad nauseum almost. But we also have to take a step back for a moment and think about the fact that if you were to talk to, I see a wide breadth of people in this room, many of them with a great deal of melanin in their skin like myself. Please raise your hand if you are African American and you're in this room, and when that 24/7 Wall Street study was released, raise your hand if you were not surprised. If you were not surprised, raise your hand. So that's more than 2/3 of this room. And I would dare say many of the individuals that raise their hands, they are bright, they're educated, they have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. I even saw someone back there with a doctorate. They all raise their hands, so it's not that that this is surprising. And so when we understand that this is the place that we're at, if all we do is talk about the methodology, when are we going to actually get to the place where we talk about solutions? And what are the issues that we need to get to begin to talk about why those disparities exist economically? Because if individuals continue to remain in lower economic conditions, they will never have power in the community, because you can't control anything without economics. So I think that what we have to do is we have to get to a place where we get serious. We decide that this is an issue and that this is borderline epidemic proportions. And when you make the decision and you say, yes, this is an issue, then there has to be a cogent response to then follow that action. For example, in the state of Illinois, there was a decision made that, you know what, we have an opioid problem in Illinois. There are children around the state that are dying, not just in inner cities, but in suburban communities. They're dying of opioid overdoses, of heroin overdoses. You know what the response was when we made that decision, we made that determination, we have a problem? In the middle of a budget disaster, we spent $75 million equipping first responders with the proper medication to bring back people from an overdose. But what had to happen first? We had to acknowledge that we have a problem. So I would like for us to get to a place where we acknowledge we have a problem, talk about the things that we're doing, but clearly whatever it is that we're doing, all of us, because we all have a role in this, talk about what we're doing, but let's talk about what we can do. And that's what I'd like to be about the business of today, is really having a robust conversation around what do we plan to continue to do, how are we going to go further than clearly than where we are right now, because it isn't enough.
Thank you. Talk about what we can do and what we know. Thomas, I had the opportunity to consider some numbers with regard to our criminal justice system and how law enforcement work in this country, in this community. And I want to come back to those economic issues sort of ties together. But first, I want to get this out of the table. We know that African Americans are 9 times more likely to experience law enforcement than their white counterpart. And can you give us some insight into why is that? Why, I think one of the things you mentioned was that Central Illinois sort of have more of a problem with this than other parts of the state, parts of the country. Can you shed some light on it?
Well, the United States Attorney's Office in the Central District of Illinois. It's not staffed by bad people. I don't want to in any way infer that they're bad people, that they are motivated by anything other than their belief that they're doing the right thing. But their approach for the past 20 to 30 years is to fight the war on drugs as hard as they possibly can, especially through the late 80s and early 90s, through things like what they call Operation Weed and Seed, is focus on charging crack cases, even tiny amounts of crack cases that involved 2 grams, 3 grams of crack cocaine, and giving people 10, 15 years in prison for that amount of crack cocaine. And one of the ways in which having a disproportionate contact with law enforcement, even at the local level, is you get more convictions for minor drug offenses. So then if the federal government decides to charge you, those priors get used to dramatically increase your sentence. And we just incarcerated a generation of young people, mostly young men of color, for decades. And in my opinion, it had a devastating impact on the African American community. Last year, in federal courts for drug trafficking offenses, there were 4,928 white defendants sentenced to prison for trafficking offenses and 4,728 African American defendants. So an almost equal number. Problem is, under the 2010 census statistics, 63% of the population is white and only 12% of the population in the country is African American. And the federal government, the Congress, gave prosecutors really heavy sentences and to use, ideally, to use inappropriate sentences when you were dealing with a very serious case that needed harsh punishment, so that those penalties would be available. But what ended up happening is they started just using those massive penalties against everyone. And if there's going to be a new United States attorney here next year. The current one is retiring. And there has been some change on the federal level, at the national level, with the thoughts about mass incarceration and the war on drugs. The problem is it doesn't always get down to the line prosecutor who's been prosecuting for 10 or 15 years and doesn't think they've been doing it wrong, and so doesn't feel a need to change. In fact, quite the opposite, thinks that what they're doing is the right thing. So I think one thing that can be done locally is, depending on the results of the election, if a Democrat is elected, the person that really is going to select or have a very large impact on who the next United States Attorney is going to be Senator Dick Durbin. And so if people, you want something you can do, reach out to Senator Durbin's office and say, you want somebody in the United States Attorney's office who is really going to re-examine the way we approach prosecuting drug offenses, and somebody that will effectuate that change to beline prosecutors who think nothing's been going wrong, nothing's been done wrong. Because the results of getting a federal felony conviction on your record, it's almost impossible to get over. We tell people, all right, you're convicted, go do your sentence, learn your lesson, come out and become a productive member of society, and then make it virtually impossible for the person to become a productive member of society. They can't get hired. They'll get denied government benefits. And then when they fail, because no options are available to them, they get sent back to prison because they failed. So I really do think that just the aggressive approach we took on drug prosecutions, we are now reaping what we've been sowing for the past couple of decades. And we need to change that. There's always a need for law enforcement. And part of what's happened, I think, is it's really hurt dramatically the relationship between the minority community and the police. And so there's a lack of trust and a lack of willingness to help the police in investigations. And that's a sad thing as far as I'm concerned, because, with the epidemics of shootings and homicides, that's not, that needs to be prosecuted. Rethinking the war on drugs doesn't mean you're not going to prosecute violent offenses, but if the community is not willing to assist law enforcement in serious violent offenses because they're angry and frustrated with what they've seen about drug enforcement, then that is a bad cycle that just keeps going ever downward. And so I hope to see a fundamental change in the thought process of how to choose how to prosecute cases in our district.
Professor White, we know that our criminal justice institution is made up of people. People who went to school, received law enforcement degrees in many cases, that are making decisions based upon training, experience. As someone who teaches, work with criminal justice students every day, is this problem a matter of training, education, or is there something else at play?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting myself and Professor Graff. We work together at ICC. There is no doubt at all in my mind that you're not born a police officer. As a retired cop of 28 years, federal and overseas, and now teaching criminal justice courses. You're not born a policeman. You're actually taught this, and you endeavor to try the best to enlighten people through knowledge about everything that's going on in the community. Prospective students and whatnot. The training as it goes for law enforcement and from my research is spot on, where there are some issues where certain individuals could be selected for service, maybe more vetting, a better vetting procedure because they're lacking maybe core knowledge, understanding of different cultures, heterogeneous societies too. Kind of thinking model in a horse type of blinder fashion. We do know that sensitivity, understanding of other cultures and other people, society is changing and they must change as well. That's why you have so much topic on implicit bias and whatnot that's going on, retraining across the country. And it's actually in the federal reports. The President's Commission, 21st Policing, is talking about retraining, retooling police departments. It's to the head. It's not about the size. It has nothing to do with how big you are. It's how you think, how you accept people. Understanding people is the key. The more you understand others, the better officer you're going to be. There's no doubt about that. Even in the face of the draconian that we heard about with the criminal justice system and this mass incarceration. But officers, yes, they can be taught, but it's knowledge that does it. It's not a skill set so much as it is an understanding. And that understanding, you have to continually revisit this. It's like anything else. After 6 months, if you walk away from it, it's no longer going to stay there embedded in your mind, which is like even why tonight, the first 4 rows behind you are ICC criminal justice students. Why we make it a point. They want to go on into law enforcement, and we want to make it a point to know it's knowledge that makes you a better officer. Sure, we can teach you the law, self-defense, etc. But this up here, how you accept and view the world and people, that makes a world of difference in what you do when you initiate a conversation with someone that doesn't look like you, a different sexual orientation, a different gender. From the time you become more appreciative of others and kind of understanding their plight, it makes it easier on both sides because people want to be heard and respected. This goes to legitimacy. This goes to, procedure, how are we carrying out the laws that we're empowered. If we respect through knowledge, the people we deal with that might not look like us or have as much money as us, the pathway is a lot easier. Community policing becomes easier. It takes knowledge to do that, not skill sets. You know, it's a skill set, it's not gonna happen, it won't work.
But what concerns me, and I mean, as a sociologist, I take that and I look across our city, and we know that there's a high degree of segregation in our city, in terms of racial segregation, economic segregation, and the reality is that many of our law enforcement officers who are of a different race, different socioeconomic status than those who live in, let's say, African American communities, don't get the opportunity to interact on a regular basis, to get to know those members of the community as people. I mean, so it's very easy to put folks in a category and to respond as such. How do we get beyond that? How do we get beyond the implicit bias? Because certainly that bias is informed by our experiences and given the realities of how Peoria is laid out.
From what I understand, Doc, is this. Probably one of the better approaches that's been around for 160 years now, and it's actually replicated here by the city of Peoria Police, I'm aware it is the idea of community policing. You really want to get out into the communities and stop just as being a force. That's old school. Going in and just locking up people and throwing down these very harsh penalties for minor offenses that are non-violent. That's not going to work. You have to become a part of the community, engaging in the community, attending public events. That's how you overcome and more knowledge. And it goes both ways, because while you're trying to learn the community is learning more about you. Because typically, and I want to say this and I want to be fair about this, if you have 100 officers, and I often teach this in the classroom, it's just like the community. You're going to have a few of these bad apples. The culture has to be changed from the top down. It is management that creates the culture in any police department. Management, senior management. What we say, people will replicate. You dress slovenly as a captain, 6 months later, you watch all of your officers, they'll be dressing slovenly too. You dress smart and clean, you have respect for people, your officers replicate, imitate that behavior. Why? They want to succeed in your department. So it starts at the top, but community policing is definitely the way to do this. It has many names across our great nation, but at the same time, if you don't do it and get into the community and interact with those people in the community, you'll never have police legitimacy, and it'll be hard to actually police in those communities effectively.
Okay. I saw Representative Gordon, you wanted to respond?
Yes, I actually want to respond to you. I think if we allow ourselves to look at many of these issues outside the realm of economics, we're going to miss the boat. When we talk about mass incarceration and the war on drugs, that was clearly about economics. And I say that because when we look at the opportunities to pass criminal justice reform right here in 2016, this past year, we passed in Illinois 18 criminal justice reform bills. Most of those bills did not pass unanimously, meaning individuals up and down this state, Democrat and Republican, voted against those measures. And I have studied them with great detail. And when I've gone through and I've looked at the respective individuals who voted no on those pieces of criminal justice reforms, you know what the commonality with all of those individuals were? They have prisons in their communities. So this is about economics. So we have to be mindful about, when we talk about these issues, what it ultimately boils back down to. And if we're going to talk about disrupting people's economic situation, you better be prepared to fight. Because nobody is giving you anything. It's going to require a massive level of understanding, education, organization, mobilization, and then holding people accountable. People have to be held accountable, particularly in the elected public sphere, for the decisions that they make on behalf of communities. And there was a conversation about the segregation that goes on, whether it's Peoria, Chicago. Again, the segregation that we are experiencing in this community, that is also a byproduct of economics. When you look at particular communities and their lack of discretionary income, the ability to move into certain places in town, it just simply is impossible because of their economic situation. So I just wanted to bring us back to that space because again, the study that we began this conversation with is about the economic disparity between blacks and whites in this community.
And when you say economics, that sort of suggests that people are making conscious decisions, making sort of calculated moves, and it's not just institutions and processes that are at work.
Dr. Spiller, nothing happens by accident.
Nothing happened by accident.
No. Councilwoman Beth Jensen.
Well, Dr. Spiller, while you're catching your consciousness here, she was, by the way, my student, and she's really good at economics. But in addition, there's a collateral damage. More people you put in prison takes away money from everything else in the state. You probably know the ratio, but I remember 10, 11 times more money spent to keep one person in a state prison as we spend on a student at Manual High School.
It costs $30,000 a year to incarcerate someone federally. And the price keeps getting up because through the mass incarceration, you're incarcerating older people. It costs more to incarcerate. And you're right on point. The reason on the federal level you're actually getting some federal criminal justice reform is because when sequestration happened, the Department of Justice finally had some of their money flow cut off. The Bureau of Prisons, part of their budget, just keeps getting bigger and bigger, doesn't leave money for anything else, and some conservative, fiscally conservative Republicans finally started looking at the amount of money we spend on incarcerating. That's not spent on college. That's not spent on quality pre-K care. That's not spent on drug treatment. Instead, it's much cheaper to send somebody to drug treatment than to spend $30,000 a year to put them in prison because they're a drug addict, so they can't stop buying drugs or selling drugs to support them. It makes no sense economically.
So if we accept the notion that it is economics, again, City Councilwoman Beth Jensen, are we then to understand that the reason why the African American community have such a difficult time getting the institutions that it pays taxes into to respond to the concerns in their community? It's because people are making decisions. It's not just political processes at work, but it's actually decisions that are rooted in economics. Do you accept that?
I guess I'm not sure.
Well, I guess what I'm asking, if we're saying that we're dealing with an economic problem, which we feel that there are economic issues at work, then why then is it so difficult for members of the African American community or the African American community to get the institutions, such as be it our political apparatus, to respond to the issues that are impacting the community? How do members of the African American community get on the agenda of the City Council to get that City Council to respond to those issues, particularly when they go against the economic interests, perhaps, of some other entity?
I mean, I think you're asking me how do you get something on the city agenda, get the attention of the City Council, and get the city manager and the mayor to make change. To
right,
get
often
things done.
when there are competing interests, oftentimes there are competing claims on those limited resources.
Well, I mean, first you contact your City Council, you raise heck, like Representative Gordon said, call your council people, lobby them, send them emails, and tell them if this is a priority, this is an issue. I mean, we are aware of the report that came down in the last month, and that's why the city manager has has given us this report 2 days ago, and is going to be doing a presentation. is a priority, I think, for most of the city council, to do some things to change the economics of what's shown in that report by doing business development, economic development. We have been focusing on developing minority businesses and we offer incentives to businesses that are owned or run by minorities. We're trying to help get more businesses developed on the south side. So I don't know if you're asking me what the solutions are and what we are starting to do with
Yeah, I guess
regards to economics, or are you asking me how does the community?
Well, I guess I'll get straight to the point in that, given that there are one set of decisions made, is there room for other decisions to be made in order to get different outcomes? Because it sounds like there are conscious decisions being made to get the outcomes that we're getting.
Well, I think most definitely. I mean, there's been changes on the city council recently. You know, I'm a fairly new member to the city council. We have Councilwoman Moore, who now represents the 61605 area, who I think is here in the audience, who has made this a priority and brought the attention of a lot of these issues that are shown in this report to the city council and has pushed for those issues to be on the agenda. Things related to older neighborhoods, such as the neighborhoods on the south side and up at 61603 and 61602, have been made a priority by some of us on the council to focus on economic development there and improving the neighborhoods, as the city manager referred to. So I think that the biggest way you affect change, I mean, and you make a difference and you change the policies and you focus on these issues, is to get change on the city council, partly. But I think that that is happening, and this is a focus and more of a priority for the council than it has been. One of the things that was mentioned is that this CSO project and solution that we've been negotiating with the federal government for 3 years. Part of that solution, we are going to be investing close to $200 million in primarily the south side of Peoria, but we'll be doing green infrastructure, establishing a whole new economy, which part of the way we have developed is to focus on a whole sector of new jobs for the community, where we would hopefully plan to focus on the minority community, to train the minority community that has got such high unemployment to work in this new field. And we're going to be leaders in the entire country. It's never been done, a community like ours done 100% green solutions. So we're hoping that that is going to be a whole area of economic development we've never had in the city. And we hope to recruit people from that have low economics to participate in that solution and in those new jobs that will be coming to the city of Peoria.
Okay. So it sounds like you're hopeful that things are changing and going to change.
Well, and with regards to some of, I know we're focused on economics, but the changes in policing, which I think the professor mentioned, the city has in the last few years focused more on community policing. We've hired 4 residential officers in the last 2 or 3 years that live in 61605 and 61603 and 61602. They live in the neighborhoods, they live in a house, they walk the streets, they go to the community and neighborhood meetings, they come to the schools, so they know the people on the streets. And that the council has made that a priority to continue that program and to continue to add in more residential officers to help with policing and community relations.
Patrick, I saw you move the mic closer to you.
I did. I think I wanted to add just that the city can do, and the council is incredibly invaluable at this, and so is Representative Booth. When you can talk to your elected officials and stress the need for change in your neighborhoods and change in your city, that goes a long way. We sit down every year and we plan with the council and we lay out a process where we start to prioritize what the council says are those needs. So if the council doesn't hear from you, it's going to be on their radar screen. So that's why it's important that you continue to talk with them and engage with them in order to stress the importance of that.
Okay. Dennis, I know you spent a lot of time thinking about these issues over the last year or so. I mean, what is your reaction to the conversation that have taken place thus far in the context of your writing about this report over the last year?
I think, well, first, thank you for inviting me to come speak. One of the things that's come up has been priorities. And at the Journal-Star, it's one of the things, I don't think we have many friends in the community, especially on the south side, on our coverage, because the only time you saw people of color on our paper was when bad things were happening. And that had to change. And over the past two years, the Journal-Star, the newsroom, has been reaching out to the community. We have a monthly meeting throughout the neighborhood where we're meeting people, we're hearing about stories that we should be covering, stories about good things happening in the community, so we made that a priority. And last year when the Wall Street 24/7 report came out the first time Peoria was on that list, we looked at that and said we need to tell some of the stories that are behind what's happening there. So over the past year, we've been writing a series of stories under the name City of Disparity, and taking a look at what's happening there. Because I think it's very important for the entire community to see, to be able to see what's happening through other people's eyes. And we've been able to tell those kind of stories about healthcare, education, the economy, jobs, and law enforcement. These are things that we're doing, and I think it's important for us to, when we go out to reach out to the community, I look out there and I see many people who've actually been to our meetings, where we have new sources, new people who have been able to come and tell us things that we should be writing about. And so it's important for us to be out there and to make it a priority.
Okay, I want to come back to you. I want to I was coming to you.
Dr. Spiller,
Yes.
thanks for asking me to come. I think the speakers here have been wonderful. I've learned a lot, and I thought I was going to learn a lot, and I did. One of the things, though, there are a couple things. One of the things I want to say is that the situation in Peoria for African Americans, you know, the report is not talking about minorities, it's talking about African Americans in Peoria is horrible. It is something that should make us all very upset. This is about, in some cases, life and death. This is not one of those things where we sit around and say, if you communicate with me and I communicate with you, it's going to get better. It's not like that. And as you have said, the economic part of this is killing our young people who can't get jobs. And I think it's important to know that Black communities have been disempowered. It's not like we were sitting there poor all our lives. We've been disempowered. When I grew up in Peoria, I lived on 1st Street by McKinley. I went to McKinley. My 3 blocks, all Black, all married, 2-parent household, working class. We had a doctor because they had to live there, because Peoria was very segregated. We had the first Black high school counselor who lived across the way. My dad was a truck driver because it was segregated. But we had a lot of richness there. You come back in the 70s, it looks, you know, in Black communities, when I came to visit, my understanding is that Caterpillar had started laying out Blacks before whites, and people were devastated. And then Caterpillar started laying off whites, and people started paying attention, right? So I think it's important to know the depth and the importance of our discussion. And I think also a question that I ask myself is, I'm a part of an institution. I'm a part of Bradley University. I'm a part of the educational system. In what ways do our institutions that we represent contribute to this situation that we have right now? I think what we saw was in that report, and I looked up the numbers to validate them, what we saw is that there is this concentrated poverty in Black communities. 48% of female-headed households with children are Black. In our community, the Black women, 48% of them with children, live below the poverty level. They are poor. For white folks, it's around 14%. Whites are doing very well in Peoria. That is the difference. Now people say, well, what about your skills? Black boys need to get more skills. Even if you have skills, a white boy with a prison history is going to get a job before you do. It's this is serious. So I wanted to put that out.
Thank you. Pastor Hubbard, many would argue that these realities have been with us for a long time. But the difference today versus the past is that the Black church was at the center of the struggle, so to speak, back then. Whereas today, it seems that the church, as one of our strongest institutions in the past to deal with a lot of these issues, have been absent from the fight. What's your reaction to those claims?
First, thanks for the invitation. I've likewise learned a lot and been challenged in a number of ways. I think my initial reaction to that is the landscape has changed in our communities, even for the church. The landscape in the sense of, in the 60s, the church was the entity because we didn't have a lot of other entities that we could participate in and be a part of. So we were fully vested in the church as the place for us to go for almost everything. As times have changed and things have changed, we've been given access to a number of other entities. Our being vested in the church is not as great as it once was in the 60s and the 70s. I think that has some impact as far as the influence that the church has now in the African American community. We're also now and it's not a bad thing, a more religiously diverse community than we've been in the past. So typically in the past, every African American went to a church. That's not our norm now. So we talk about rallying the troops, so to speak. You can't do it as easy with the same amount of numbers. I think on the other end, I've been challenged tonight from the perspective of I believe we can and have to do more. I believe we have to do more, one, in educating our people. Just the information that's been communicated tonight as I'm sitting listening, my congregation needs to be aware that many of the frustrations, because I'm talking to the brothers who have felonies and who are saying, Pastor, I want to work, but I can't get a job. I've applied everywhere, and as soon as they see my felonies, they won't even give me an interview. They won't talk to me. I'm talking to the sisters who are single mothers who are saying, Pastor, I'd love to go to, meet with my kid's teacher, but I'm working 2 jobs so that I can take care of my children. So I don't have time to get to the school to sit in a conference, to talk with the teacher about my child and his issues. So I think we have to do more, one, in encouraging and supporting those who are trying, in educating them as it relates to the issues and the facts, that it is economic. But I think as I listen, we also have to do more, and this is the major challenge for me, in challenging the systems on behalf of our people. For example, and I'm glad that our professor mentioned it, that as a city, Peoria, so I thank God for the city council and all of that, but there's a larger entity a corporate entity that has a lot of say in this community, that has a lot of say as it relates to the council and how this city is going to go and going to operate. And we have to challenge the city to say, you can't put their interests ahead of our interests. And I think that's why I see now, as I listen tonight, a part of my challenge is how do I rally the troops to challenge the city to say, you need to consider the interests of the people and not just these larger corporations who exist in our community. And as Representative Booth has reminded us, also to hold those accountable who are currently in office, to be reminded, and just going through this national election has been the reminder for me. We have the greatest opportunity to have the greatest impact in local elections. So you don't need a whole lot of votes to get somebody out of office. So reminding our people, we have more power than we realize if we can go to the polls, especially in the local elections. With 2,000 votes, you can change the landscape of the city, right? So if you can get 2,000 black folk to agree to the same agenda, to say, hey, we're gonna partner to make sure the right people get in office who will agree with our larger agenda. And it's really not, and I want to be clear, it's really not about a black agenda or a white agenda. It really is about a valuing of people, because that's the larger issue, the valuing of people. So from, of course, my religious perspective, God loves people more than anything. And what we're seeing is a devaluing of people, of putting money before people. So it really is about saying that it's in all of our best interests if we can value everybody in this community. That's how we're going to do that as a community.
I want to shift gears a bit to talk about where do we go from here. You had something you want to contribute to?
Yeah, just what I heard up here today is very enlightening. I grew up on the south end of Peoria. Matter of fact, I was almost born on the front porch on Proctor Street, across the street there. I'm a 61605 resident, graduated a year after Ryan did. And I know me as a black male in this community, I always wanted to give back, and how I felt I could give back was law enforcement. Growing up in this community and seeing the way it is now, it's just like Representative Booth said, we need resources. Our voices need to matter. Being the police chief for the schools is twofold a great thing, because I can help in that law enforcement perspective where, you know, the best thing Peoria Public Schools did was have their own police department. That way, when these kids do commit a felony or something like that, we can stem that tide so that a 15-year-old young black male won't get a felony at 15, and that will be the rest of his life. We can actually mentor those people. We can stem that tide, and just seeing the needs that Peoria Public Schools has financially, and we actually have a chance on a ballot, you know, this year to fix some of those needs. But resources and just for people on the south end to feel empowered. As I was growing up, it was something just as simple as, you know, my grandfather, I was raised by him. You know, he would always tell us, why would the snow be removed on the north end before it would be removed down here? It was just something as simple as that. It kind of put it in perspective for me about who was valued. I gave a speech to 8th graders here at Manual that graduated, and I did research, and there are 14 to 15,000 zip codes in the United States, and 61605 is in the top 10 poorest zip codes. And that was staggering to me, because this is where I grew up. And me, sometimes I kind of got a big mouth. I can come out there and say, this is what we need, and we do need to act. I go to a lot of meetings like this sometimes, and it's a lot of talk around a round table, and the talk is cute, but when it comes time to put in the work, there's nobody to be found. The South End has just been ignored for so long, and then now that it's starting to affect Peoria as a whole, because Peoria got put on the front page of the paper, and there are other people that are going to be affected that live on the north end of Peoria, now it's a problem. And it's not just always a black and white issue. I'm the type of person you gotta call a spade a spade. Some diseases that African Americans have, sickle cell, there's not a lot of research done there because it's not a white mainstream issue. And when something becomes a white mainstream issue, drug abuse, something like that, that's when the government and everybody wants to put money behind it. It's just that type of reasoning that is really keeping the zip code and really keeping the city down. If we would rally and get our heads together and understand that if we all together would put our efforts into improving things, into improving schools, then we could get a lot farther. But I hate that it took, and like Representative Booth said, you know, there's a lot of African-American people here that weren't surprised with this outcome. I wasn't surprised. But it takes that for somebody to wake up. That's kind of scary. But I do think we have to give hope to 61605. If Barack Obama was president when I was a kid, that would have opened up a huge glass ceiling for me, because as a kid growing up in 61605, I didn't know black people could do that. I didn't know somebody African American could do that. And even now, I think Peoria is taking some strides, especially in the law enforcement community. And African Americans, they do get in the newspaper a lot for the bad things, the shootings, but there's a lot of things that we don't talk about. Your African American police chiefs that can mold the young lives. Peoria Police, African American police chief. Our police department, African American police chief. Park District, African American police chief. That's something that should be celebrated. And I know I take my life experience in growing up in 61605 and I apply it to my department. That's the way we do police work. We get in people's lives, we intervene, we try to fix the issue instead of arresting our way out of it. But I think it's just, we have to give hope to the city, to the South End, to African Americans in general, because a lot of these kids that I deal with at school, and I begged to work down here as an officer because I wanted to come back to the community that I grew up in, but a lot of these kids, their world is from Adams Street to Moss to Lincoln, and I mean, that's their life. That's it in that box. And if we bring opportunity down here, if we just expand their world, they can see that there's more than just this box here. So what everybody up here said was great. It's just, we need to be better economically, and we need to have all hands on deck here.
I think one of the reasons why I assembled this group here is because I thought it's important to understand that our sort of policing problem is not just a law enforcement problem, but it's an economic problem, it's a social problem, it's a political problem. And we as a community have a lot of resources to address those problems, whether it's Illinois Central College, it's Bradley, whether it's the city council. There are a lot of resources, organizations, churches in this community that if we could come together and think collectively about those problems, that we could leverage our resources to begin to see some changes, because given the statistics that has now rocked our city, certainly we are perhaps not that far away from being a tragedy with regard to some sort of law enforcement issue, and the hopes is that we can get ahead of that, and maybe we could prevent our city from being on the news for another reason. And so with that said, I want to talk in a short amount of time about some solutions. I want to open the conversation up to the audience to get their questions and comments and concerns. I know that there are two members of the panel who I haven't came to. There's a reason I haven't forgotten you all. But I just want to put it out. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? How do we begin to make choices that reflect our humanness rather than those economic realities? We put people first over economics, and how we go about prioritizing the agenda for the city, for our organizations, and the decisions that we make. And so, with that said, if you put that out as our charge, I'm going to stand up here, grab the mic, and allow the audience to ask some questions. But I would like us to think about the issue, where do we go from here? We have discussed what other problems, and I want to remind you that this is the beginning. This is the beginning. It is my hopes that we will have 2 more conversations. This conversation here is about bringing the city leaders, officials, change makers together. Hopefully the next time we can bring together those state change makers, the county change makers, because certainly this is a huge problem. And as we said, it's not just an African American problem, but this is a city problem. And if we can leverage our county, our state, I think that we have a chance of turning these numbers around. Because I remind you that last year we were number 6 on the list. Within 1 year we went to number 1. So we have some work to do. Is there a question in the audience? Going to move around.
Good evening. We opened the discussion with a great deal of emphasis on statistics and statistical methodology. We talked a lot about accountability. I'm just wondering, are there specific metrics relative to some of the programs that the city has been implementing towards minorities, but specific metrics around advancing economic circumstances for African Americans? And what are those program targets that are in place, and what progress has been made in those areas?
So specifically, we've set the target in the diversity goals of our police and fire at 40%, and we're working over the next 10 years to try and move towards that. This past year, we didn't quite hit the target where we wanted to be, so we know that we have some work on that front in order to continue to diversify the workforce of the police and fire department. As far as other economic metrics that we have, as I mentioned earlier, we've been trying to raise the number of minority apprentices in the construction trades, and we've set goals in that endeavor as well to try and hit that target of shooting for 40% as well. We've been moving, we're at 20% right now, so that's another area that we've been looking at. Some of the concerns that I have, obviously when we have an unemployment rate difference that is so stark between whites and blacks in the city, that's something that we need to address. And that's the reason that I kept, when I opened up, by saying that we need to have this as a regional conversation, because many of the employers don't live in the city, and they need, but they may have their businesses here, but they don't live in the city. So we need to have that conversation as a region to say this is something we all have to address, and we have to move forward.
I think did you want to respond?
Sure, thank you. And again, I appreciate the invitation. From the fire department side, we do have a long way to go. This past year in particular, we have made some progress. Little as it may be, we are still working hard to continue in that way. Our hiring process is bound by legislation, which basically is a rank order hiring. So we're bound in that hiring process. And no offense, but sometimes changing that legislation, and I know that Representative Booth and Senator Kaler are both working
to find some kind of a solution that we can better look at our hiring processes. So because of that, we decided to look at other solutions, if you will, and that is getting out into the schools. Again, this takes a little bit of time, but we're getting into the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to make them aware of what the fire service is all about, making them aware of the opportunity as a city employee, city of Peoria employee, what they can appreciate becoming an employee. So we're getting out into the Horizons Club. We're getting more Peoria High School, or Peoria school kids involved in our Explorer Post. That's a 14 to 21 year old program where the kids are 14 to 21 years old. They can be a part of the Explorers. From there, we restarted a cadet program. We have 3 new cadets that are in our academy this 10 weeks. They get paid 24 hours a week, and they also get their education paid for. It's a good program, and we have 3 solid kids that are going through that program right now that are from City of Peoria. They're City of Peoria kids. We have a dual credit program. Our dual credit program, in conjunction with ICC and Peoria Public Schools and Peoria Fire Department, is a dual credit program that is a pathways program. That once these kids finish their EMS classes, they walk out the door with, I believe it's 9 credit hours, plus an EMT basic license if they pass. It's a pathways program. When they graduate, when they walk out the door with that license, they can go to work because they are EMT based at that point. We have a fire science program with that that's working at the same time, but the next semester we're looking at working those in one after the other, so that the students will be able to walk away as a senior with 18 credit hours that is paid for. So the City of Peoria is working with our partners to try to address some of these concerns for our City of Peoria kids.
And how do a young person get involved?
We have with the cadet program, we have an application process that they can apply for. We have 3 cadets. We have budgeted for next year an additional 6 for next year. So we're trying to stagger those so that we have a good age group going through. We have the seniors that can start to mentor those young kids as they're coming through. So we have an application process for the cadet program. The dual credit is through their counselors. Right now we're working with Richwoods and Peoria High. We did not have any students from Manual High School, Manual Academy that applied for the program. So we're going to get with Manual Academy and work hard to get some of those kids into this program. The classes are being held at Woodruff right now. It is a great opportunity. It's a start. We have a long way to go, but we're up for the challenge.
Thank you.
I applaud each of you for being here this evening and sharing some of your ideas. My name is Brent Foster. I'm a pastor in the community with Pastor Deborah. I serve as a hospital chaplain at Methodist. Grew up in Peoria, left Peoria, came back. I think for me, hearing all what you've said as a person who's been in this community, I think one of my challenges to all of you and to our community, I don't have any ideas, but I have a challenge. I'm going to share some history with you first. I was a leader of an organization that started about 16 years ago called Community Builders Foundation. We were working to work with the rural communities of Peoria, the city, to bring resources to our community to empower our communities. One of our board members who was on the city council in the 60s said to me one day, "Friend, I want to ask your forgiveness." And I said, "What for?" And he told me the story about the city council that one day decided to redline all of 7th Street, 6th Street, 5th Street, 4th Street at a closed session and decided the former mayor made a decision that he made a decision without the council to work with the University of Illinois to bring the School of Medicine to Peoria. He said, he realized later what it did to devastate our community on the South End. That was a closed-door economic decision, not considering the people. As I sit here, I think about one of the things we might need to do as a city is to ask God's forgiveness for how we've treated one another in this city. I grew up as one of the black families that integrated from the tap rooms to the north central Peoria and watched many of the hatred and the hurts, and have tried to work most of my life to work toward interracial relationships and healing. And one of the things I continue to struggle with and cry and concerned about is that we forget, as Pastor Devereaux said, we are valuable people. But I know change comes when we acknowledge our miscomings. We acknowledge the things that we've done wrong. We do that as individuals. We acknowledge and admit, I've done this wrong, I'm sorry. I don't know if our city's ever really repented for that action, because it has devastated the South End. I remember that city, that part of Peoria was beautiful. But that one decision has started a rippling effect in this city. And I would admonish you, as people of the city, if you're a praying person, God, please forgive us for our actions and heal our city. We could talk about all kind of ideas. And we've been doing it for years and we've not seen change. I think maybe we should think about doing something else, like truly repenting of the city.
So I'm not from Peoria. I moved here about 2.5 years ago from the south side of Chicago. So when I heard about that article about Peoria being like not good for black folks, it kind of shocked me, because I was like, okay, moving from Chicago, I thought it was a relief moving here because I was able to find a job and my mom not being worried about me coming home all the way from 35th and stuff like that. So it kind of shocked me. And then, like, I think how you said, Reverend, like, you know, like we put in money over everything, and I think that's kind of true, because we see situations and like, oh, okay, it becomes a huge problem. I feel like we throw money at it, but I feel like we don't take time to find the importance and dissect the situation. And you guys say a huge thing is we need to get back into communities, and I think that's true, but I'm like really curious. What do you guys really think in the community are we going to do, like with the people, like events, like what do you think is really going to happen when you actually go out to the community? What are you going to do, or what can really make an impact?
Anyone want to tackle that?
I actually want to, and I'm not ignoring that comment, but I hope that it comes full circle. So I would like to acknowledge a couple of people that are in the room this evening, Mr. Al Hooks and Mr. Don Jackson, who is still currently the president of the NAACP. Al Hooks, a very hard-working member of the NAACP, and I'm mentioning their names because in terms of involvement, I really want to illustrate what it means when people say power cedes nothing without a demand. Because of their involvement with the NAACP, they went back and they did research. So all the conversations that we're having right now around public safety, fire, and police hiring, and the lack of hiring in African American communities, that work and that research was done by them, along with some other hardworking people in the NAACP. They went back and they pulled through 10 years of public information, public data that showed that in 10 years, with 70 plus hires, only one African American had been hired. One. These are all head of household jobs. These are all jobs that have the ability to change your life, to change your spouse's life, to change your children's life. These are the kinds of jobs that allow you to pay your bills and to help your child receive a better education and go to college. And in 10 years, one African American had been hired. But again, they did the work. They did the work, they brought that information forth to the council. Again, power sees nothing without a demand. The demand was, we in this community believe that the public safety, that the fire and police workforce should be reflective of the community that we live in. And because they did that work, now the city council unanimously passed an ordinance that indicates that that will have to happen moving forward. So, to the point of getting involved and getting engaged in the community, a lot of times it isn't about creating something new or creating new events, but it's about supporting the initiatives and the people that have been doing this work for a very, very long time, who have been highly effective at doing what they do, but not necessarily getting their just due in the work that they've been doing literally for decades. So on behalf of myself and all the individuals in here, I want to thank Don, Al, and the entire NAACP for making that happen, because there will be individuals that will be hired on their merit, but they were only given that opportunity, because nobody's asking for a handout, it's about an opportunity. That opportunity was created by the work of the NAACP.
Professor Graf, in another life, you were Chief of Police of Morton. Can you talk to us about the challenges, difficulties of hiring, given that you were in a position to hire and fire? I mean, why are the numbers so low? What are the challenges of hiring a more diverse police
Well, I
force?
think that the chief spoke about earlier, the issue in hiring law enforcement across much of the state of Illinois is controlled by state statute. And the state statutes that we deal with hiring people were passed in the 60s and 70s and really haven't been updated much since that time. So we're dealing with old laws that really don't lend themselves to hiring a diverse police force. So that's part of the problem. But I want to say something, because you asked the question earlier, where do we go from here? And I want to talk about specifically what I'm seeing as a professor at ICC in the criminal justice program. And I looked at the class that I had today. It was made up of 20 students. Now, 5 years ago, those 20 students would have been probably 75% white male. Today, my class was made up of 9 white males, 7 African American women, 4 white females, a couple of people with Hispanic surnames, and 1 African American male. So I'm seeing diversity in the classroom that I have never seen before. And I talk about things in my classroom. I had a student a year ago that was a black male student from this zip code, and I talk about driving while black. And I happened to talk to him before class to ask him if I could use him as an example. And he just happened to tell me that he never drives, and he said, "Why don't you drive?" And he said, "Because I don't want to get stopped by the police." And I had him share that with my students, because a lot of the students aren't from the city, don't realize what it means to be an African American male living with a police force today. And my hope and desire by doing that is that the students coming through our program today will learn what it's like to be over-policed. And as a part of that, I think we're getting students from our program that have the opportunities to do things that they've never been done before. The other issue, coming back to what you talked about with hiring, when we get very good candidates of color, oftentimes they're snatched up by communities far more affluent than our city. They get jobs in the suburbs, they get good paying jobs, good candidates, but they get hired away from us. And the city manager can probably speak to that more than I can. So we're losing our quality candidates to higher paying areas. And that's a shame, because in the 40 years I've been in law enforcement, I've seen the Peoria Police Department change dramatically, and it's more representative of the city of Peoria than I've ever seen, and they've done wonders there. They're more connected with the city than they've ever been in the past. And we are losing candidates, we are losing valuable police and fire recruits to other areas, and that's a shame.
Thank you.
Good evening. I live right here in the heart of 61605, and I just live 2 blocks from here. Some of the blame I put on the way we live in the area is because of the city, because you should let the city get to this point. I keep my property up, and most of the people in the area does, but it's very seldom you come and sweep the street. We the last one to always get out. Sometimes I used to be late for work because I couldn't get down the street because of the snow and ice. So too many times you're late, you lose your job. So that's some of the problem that we have. And this, I think it's like 3 houses in my area for rent. Would one of you like to come and rent one of them? We got the policemen staying in different areas. Why don't we have some of the city councils or some of you guys come in one of the houses? Okay, and then when you talk about things that the kids don't have because of their parents don't have a good job or they can't find a job. We just started, it takes a village here at Manual High School. My daughter is president and I am the vice president. We have all the toiletries and things that they need. And it would help us, if you could help us get some more things so we have more to give them. So how do we go by asking you to help us do things like that? And then we talk about all the empty lots around town and how they don't keep them clean. My daughter just bought a lot because she got tired of me complaining because they wouldn't keep it cut. She bought it, we leveled it out, and it's clean now. But we need people to come and talk to us about what they're going to do for us, not about what we number 1, we number 2, number 6, or whatever. And we don't need no sugarcoat. We need you to come and do something and do it. Representative Booth, I want to thank you for everything that you've done in the area. I want to thank you for even helping me with my business, because whenever you need something, you call me. So, you know, you're good as helping. Pastor Hubbard, don't hit me. But you know what, I like the things that you guys are saying, some of you, not all of you, just some of you. Because some of you don't understand how we live. I live good only because I retired from Caterpillar. And at that time, the only reason why I got the job at Cat was because of the NAACP, John Gwynn. John Gwynn was a fight man, and he got us in there. And then when I got in there, I had to fight to stay in there. Because you know what? The white people didn't want us in there. So I had to learn 3 or 4 times than the white person had to learn. I had to break my neck in order to keep my job so I could take care of my kids. But when it all boils down, though, we paying back. So we will ask you to help us take care of these kids on the South End.
You make a great point, and thank you for that. What we need to do, this community needs to reach out to each other and get to know each other. We spend all of our time, we work, we go home, we sit on our couch, we watch TV. We need to take some time to go to meet and talk to our neighbors. Not just the people who live on your street or in your subdivision, but people who live throughout the city. We've got to get to know each other better. Otherwise, nothing's going to change if you don't know what people need or how you can help. We've got to get out.
I have a question over here.
Thank you, City Manager. But I guess I'm asking for specifics because, yes, we need to reach out. I mean, I'm not sure how many people in the panel live on the South Side. or you guys don't live on the south side of Peoria, you live in the suburbs or the outskirts or in the better part of the neighborhoods of Peoria. So my question is how do you speak? I'm looking at this room, it's not even clear to have a full. Speak to the disconnect, because I feel like it's more than just an economic disparity. There seems to be a disconnect between city leaders and what actually goes on in the streets of Peoria, what actually is affecting the schools manual in the different schools and the issues on the south side. So I feel like even the lack of people in this room speaks to a disconnect when Peoria was ranked the worst city for African Americans. So I understand we need to reach out, but I guess what I'd like to specifically, how will you reach out? What will you specifically do as city leaders to address these issues? And you lay the groundwork, you be on the ground, you rally the community, because again, elected officials, that's your duty, to not tell us to rally, but to rally us for better causes, better purposes. We shouldn't have to tell you to fix our streets. Just fix the streets. We shouldn't have to tell you to fix the schools. Just simply fix the schools. So the question is I hear you where you to put the burden and the onus on the citizens, but what specifically can you do to address the disconnect between those of us who don't live on the south side or those of us who, what will you do as our elected officials, our city leaders, to address this problem? Not what we can do, but what will you do?
I think that was a powerful question, and that was kind of what I spoke to earlier. And I can only speak to my experience growing up in 61605. I kind of understood what was going on, and kind of life experience gave me that experience to put it to work in law enforcement. I still own a home, that house on Proctor Street. I was raised by my grandparents, who are both deceased now, and I still own that home. My roots are still here. I never forgot where I came from, so I can tell you what I'm doing specifically is I work my behind off to get to where I'm at, so I can help other people that start off like me. My father was a drug dealer. He went to prison. My mother is and was and is still dealing with drug and alcohol. That's why I lived with my grandparents. So for me personally, I wanted to make sure people that grew up just like I did on the South End wouldn't go through the pains and struggles that I did. So I became a police officer, and I think I had a higher calling in becoming a school police officer. And I mentor youth every day. I asked to be at the South End schools. I begged to be Tree Wind when a new chief came and he was doing rotations. I begged to be Emmanuel. I started the gang unit. First it was just called the gang unit. All they wanted to do was identify, tag, stuff like that. That's not what I was about. It was the gang intervention unit. We needed to find out why children were getting in gangs. Why did they feel helpless? And I took that charge, and still to this day, as chief, I make it the charge of the whole department that we're not gonna just arrest. We're not just gonna, I don't want aggravated batteries and arrest stats. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for interventions. Schools like Manual, there are so many brilliant kids at this school, so many. I mean, there's one sitting dead center, Mr. Sierra. Anytime he calls, I come down, I come running. I have 2 or 3 meetings that he done darn near got me in trouble for skipping, but just to sit here and talk to him for 20 minutes, that's what I do. I see Representative Booth. I see her resume and what she does. Some of the other people around this table, I see in other events. The people up here, I can tell it's not just talk, but a lot of times it takes something to spark. And for us, it is imperative that we use our own experiences, we realize the faults, and we just charge forward. But your question was spot on. I we need to personally decide what we're gonna do, not just, and also not just to sit in our silos, because I think that's one of Peoria's issues. Everybody's got a program, everybody's got a thing, everybody's asking for money for this. We need to know what these programs are, so we can all together get behind them. Just like Pastor Hubbard was talking about, you get 2,000 black votes, you can change something. Or you get people to rally behind your cause, we can get more toiletries. Shoot, I'll be the first one, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna take it to my department tonight to get our officers to donate. This is the first time I found out about it, and I wouldn't have trusted it. It's stuff like that. We need to find out what things we're doing to help. If somebody over here is raising money for, you know, cancer research, and this group over here is raising money for cancer research, it's better if these groups unite to raise money for cancer research together. I mean, it's just better that way. So to answer your question, I hope I explained the things that I want to do, and those are the things I think we need to do as a community.
City Councilwoman Beth Jensen, how exactly do one get an issue such as snow plow removal or school reform on the City Council agenda to be addressed? What's the process?
Well, the process is you contact somebody on the city council. We have 5 at-large city council people and 5 district council people and the mayor. And we're all listed on the city's website. We have phone numbers and emails, and you call us and you tell us that you want that issue on the agenda and it's important. The agenda is set by the city council and the city manager and the mayor. So that's basically the process. To answer some of the questions that have come up, and sort of to tag on to what Officer Boone has said here, you gotta get out and vote and get more people on the city council that are focused on this neighborhood and these issues. When I was elected a year and a half ago, and when I was appointed, I guess 3 years ago, I was the only at-large council person who lived in an older neighborhood. The 5 at-large council people have always lived on the north side in the same neighborhoods. We need more people on the council that live in the older neighborhoods that are down here. I am down on the south side all the time. I come to the meetings. I'm a member of the South Side Community United for Change. I go to the functions, I meet the people, and I know that these are issues, and so does Councilwoman Moore, and the 2 of us are on the council pushing for more infrastructure projects. Part of our proposed budget is to do this whole Western Avenue corridor to improve the infrastructure. We're going to be spending millions of dollars to do that, to then build businesses and attract businesses back to the south side. We pushed really hard when we lost the grocery store to save a lot here. That took a lot of work, but we know we need services and businesses down in the city, and I don't want to, I see Councilwoman Moore standing up here, but what we need to do is to keep the talk going, keep the pressure on, and get more people on the council that are focused on this issue and the problems of the differences between the African American community and the rest of Peoria, and the differences in the economics and the inequality that is happening. We have to improve that to make the whole city prosper and be better. I mean, and it's sort of like the incarceration. Ron Val from Helping Hands comes to our city council meetings all the time to talk about how this is killing our society in the city of Peoria. All these people that get let out of jail after they've been incarcerated for a long time cannot find jobs. So some of us have been working with him to try to get employers here in the city and to do training programs and to hire people who have been incarcerated for a long time. And we need to make that a priority as a city council. And I'm ready to do that, but I need help and I need other people like Councilwoman Moore to do that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Jensen. You asked a specific question, you asked for some specific things, and you didn't get that. So let me give you the answers. The Southside Community United for Change meets every 3rd Saturday at the Lincoln Library from 11:30 to 1. The Southside Community United for Change is an organization of 6 or 7 or 8 neighborhood associations who come together in one body and speaks with a bigger voice, and I'm there almost every meeting, and they say what the issues are in the neighborhood, because I'm not around everywhere. We've got 24,000 plus people in the first district, and then me representing. Thank you for allowing me to do that. And so specifically, come to the Southside Community United for Change every third Saturday from 11:30 to 1 at the Lincoln Library. We mentioned the NAACP. The NAACP meets every third Thursday. Does everyone know where the NAACP office is? On the south side. Not very many hands are going up. That's a problem. They are located on MacArthur Highway. Down the street from the NAACP is the Urban League. The Urban League has a program trying to develop STEM technology and education with children. They have a program, Girls Who Code, they can't get that program off the ground. If anybody knows Xavier Horton, they can't get that program off the ground because they don't have people who will volunteer, who will come and conduct those training programs. So that's a program wanting. You look like you're younger than my daughter. My daughter's 39 years old, so you look like much younger than that. When she asked me about getting involved in voting, and no one comes to tell me, Mom, what I need to do. I said, well, don't you know what you want to do? Well, yeah, I know how I want to help. I said, well, get off your behind, go somewhere, and tell them, hey, I'm here to help you. And so if the 24,000 plus people in the first district are waiting for me to knock on every single door to ask how I can help you, you're going to be waiting a long time because I'm one person and you're 24,000 people. In the election that brought me to the council in 2013, the 24,000 plus people who live in the district, about 16 or 17,000 of them are voting age. Ask me how many people came out to vote. Less than 1,000. Less than 1,000 came out to vote about issues related to your community. Now you talked about Western. Western hadn't had any improvements on it for more than 30 years. It took me getting on the council and asking the question, why is Western so bad? Oh, let us take a look at it. Oh God, we've not done anything. Now something's being done in a couple years to the tune of $10 million. Looking at Western, there weren't, the last grocery store left, and the city staff person, Dr. Leslie McKnight, worked her butt off because I was after her, and she brought in Save-A-Lot. I get the credit, but she did the work. Then Family Dollar opened up where Bling Bling used to be. And then what happened? You saw you had a Dollar General built from the ground up. That didn't just happen. That's me and Dr. McKnight, the city manager's office, and the mayor behind it all the way, getting that to happen. There are things that are happening in this community, but if you're going to wait at your house for somebody to knock on your door and tell you what's going on, you're going to wait a long time. Mr. Anderson is here from the Peoria Journal-Star. He can tell you how many people don't subscribe to the newspaper in the 61605 zip code. Okay, you don't have to subscribe. It's online. Or watch the news, because oftentimes we try to put that out there, what's going on out there. Or even something even that's free on the internet. The city of Peoria has a website. And we put all kinds of things that are happening in meetings on that website. So all you have to just go to the website, cityofpeoria.org, and you will find what's going on in your community. So, and then I agree with you. This room should have been packed. It should have been packed. But it never is. But those people who are not here will say, well, what are you all doing? I don't see you doing anything. You're not coming to my house. You're here, and you brought your baby. He's so sweet. So where are the other people who don't have babies? I mean, but somebody said it. People have 2 or 3 jobs. They can't be here. They're working 2 or 3 jobs. Not everybody. Where are the rest of them? I know a lot of you. I've seen a lot of you. Some of you have come to my office. But, so I don't want to stay long, and I thank you for inviting me to be here, and I had a conflict, but I'm here now. People know how to find me. You know how to find everybody up here. Everybody's got a public address. How to get things on the agenda? Show up to the council meeting. You don't have to stay a long time, just show up. The meeting sometimes lasts an hour and a half, sometimes it lasts 4. Come and stay for 30 minutes and leave. You don't have to stay for the whole thing. Watch it on TV. Send us an email when you hear that we did something that you saw Everybody knows the city council meetings on TV, right? Channel 22? Okay, I don't see any hands, so maybe you didn't know. Did you know you can see it live streamed on the internet? Anybody knew that? Don't see many hands, maybe you didn't know. Did you know that it's on the radio? Any hands? Couple. See, that's what I'm saying. So you have to find where these things are being conveyed to you, because the information oftentimes is out there, but if you don't reach out to find the information, you're gonna come here and say, what are y'all doing for me? Help me, do something for me. I'm gonna tell you what, this last thing I'm gonna leave you with. When I was running for office, I had an older gentleman ask me, well, what are you gonna do for me when you get in the office? What are you gonna do for me? And I looked at him and I said, I'm not gonna do a thing for you. I said, now let me ask you a question. What are you gonna do for yourself? Are you gonna come to me and say, Councilwoman Moore, this road needs to be repaired? I'm all over that. Are you gonna say, Councilwoman Moore, we need better infrastructure in our district? I'm all over that. Because I cannot be everywhere, I need you to call me and email me and write me and tell me what needs to be done on your street. Because I might get to your street once every 6 months. So I may not see that pothole, but you can tell me. That's what you can do specifically. Specifically. And the last thing I'll leave you with is Treeland School. Everybody knows Treeland School? We're about to have close to $2 million project over on Treeland School. You know why? Not because it just all of a sudden became a problem that our kids are walking through 2 and 3 inches of water to get to the school. That didn't just happen. That happened long before I got on the council. So why wasn't it taken care of? I don't know. I got a call from Carl Cannon. Y'all know Carl Cannon? Carl Cannon called me. You need to come down here. You need to see what I'm talking about. I came over because Carl is always in the neighborhood. 2 and 3 inches of water. Kids trying to go to school and they slopping through this water trying to get to school. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. But it's been like that forever. Long before I came to Peoria. It's on the agenda to be fixed this year. Call us. Let us know what's going on. And then when you call back. And then when you call back, come and see us. Don't let up. Thank you.
Yes, greetings to all of you. My name is Brother Mohammed. I represent the Nation of Islam here in the city of Peoria. And I am a brother that works in the South End, not just 1 hour, 365 days a week or a year. And you're talking about going door to door. We go door to door with a message that will help us solve the problem that we got. Wherever there's a cause, there's an effect. Somebody caused this effect that is happening in our community. And no one want to go to the root of the cause. If you don't go to the cause and solve that, the effect will continue to be. So we know that all what you have said, good, but it will not profit nothing. When we leave from here tonight, we're going right back to the same old thing. And it's not going to progress. Nothing is going to come out of it. Brothers going to keep going to jail because you're making money in these penitentiaries. It's a modern day plantation. That's all it is. You're making money out of the penitentiary with our brothers born in the penitentiary for nothing. So come on, you rulers. The people that rule Peoria, the people that help them rule Peoria, stop playing with us. Give us justice. Give our black people justice. That's all we're asking you for. And you, brothers and sisters, you need to start reading the Final Call newspaper. And quit passing me by on the corner like I'm crazy or something. Wake up. Stop all this foolishness going on. Ain't nobody else gonna tell you the truth. Peace.
great people here who work through the system to make some changes. We see that. There are other ways to make changes. You can work outside of the system. And it sounds to me that there have been some people who have gotten up, who've got some, some great ideas and want to see something really happen. And sometimes you work outside the system. And it may be that it's an African-American group that makes change have to happen, right?
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Alex Sear. I'm a senior at Peoria Manual Academy. First, I would like to thank you guys for allowing me to address you. I think it's a wonderful honor. So I just honestly want to walk you through a story, and this goes back to Professor Feibel, because at the beginning of the panel, he, from what I got from what you said, was a person who has the articulation and the advocacy and the leadership has the key to success. So, like I said, I'm Alex Sierra. I've lived in the 1st District forever. I was born and raised in the south side of Peoria. From this, I was troubled when I was younger. And I was fight excessively, ended up in expulsion from Peoria Public Schools, going to an alternative school. From then, I realized that life wasn't for me. So then I changed. Proposing to the district, to the board, and they then allowed me to return to public school with the rest of my peers. Then I immediately got on my A game. I was a straight A student, heavily involved, student council president of every class. As soon as I got the chance as my junior year, I was like, I want to be the deputy mayor. I want to have something to say for my entire school. I'll speak for all my peers. And to my senior year, I want to be the lead of all my peers. So from then, the Peoria Public School District 150 opened an opportunity for 3 students in the district to represent the entire district, 1 from each high school. I then immediately jumped on that opportunity, being selected as one of the 3 first student board members of Peoria Public Schools. Now, that was a profound honor of mine, and it then led me to the recruitment of one of the top Ivy League schools in the nation, Georgetown, which I'm highly thankful. With that being said, like any Ivy League school, Georgetown consists of interviews. So I had my first interview, Thorne Smith, an alumni part of the recruitment association, then came to interview me. First thing he talked about was the racial problems that I face, the economical problems that I face. How am I going to influence and guide my peers, and what impact I'm making? And as I gave him my explanation, he was like, and that's what we need in politicians. And that's what I strive to be. I strive to be a politician. So then with that being said, I have a different interviewer. So they then recommend me to go to my second stage interview. Well, there are approximately 4 individuals in Peoria who made it to this second step process, 3 of which were Caucasian. I'm the only minority, specifically African American. With that being said, I was not chosen to even be viewed for my second interview. And I was like, well, why is that? Like, I know one of the individuals, besides my test scores, my credentials are way past his. So then I started thinking of the racial inequality, which I never tried to stumble upon as a multiracial individual. But then I find it highly ironic that the individual that I know that was Caucasian then dropped out of the Georgetown application process, then resulting in me being interviewed. So as someone who is well articulate, I advocate for my peers and for myself, and I'm heavily involved across the board. I have all the credentials, yet I still face racial inequality. And from what I got from what you said, well, I have everything, so why am I not making it? So that's my question to you. I have everything, but why am I still being held back?
Was that a question? Yeah.
It was a question.
Professor Feigl, did you want to try to tackle that one?
right,
I feel sorry
young
for
man.
Georgetown.
First of all, I want to applaud you for your efforts first. That's the first thing I want to do is applaud you.
I can't speak
And
for
what is going to, just one second. What you're going to find is going to happen like this. Being African American myself, obviously, I can tell you directly. I'm a child of the early 60s, okay? So things were a lot more blatant in certain regions of America, depending on where you were from and what you would experience. You will always, whether you're African American, whether your sexual orientation comes up or your gender comes up, you will always, as long as you're considered in that group of a minority then, let's say, you're going to experience some type of block or hurdle, something more than what other people may experience. You can see that with all of the data and the numbers that everyone up here has been speaking about tonight. The point is, who you are as a person, no matter which one of those areas you fall into, African American, again, going down the spike with everyone else that might be considered different. It's your resiliency, your resolve that takes you where you need to be. You might have to sometimes give twice as much or 3 times as much for the same goal or achievement, but you're already on the right path listening to you just speak just now. You clearly have what the professor was speaking about earlier. You will meet people and stumbling blocks, whether it's systemic or just personal biases and hatred for who you are. But the point is, you have to keep going and kicking. There is no one size fits all. But it's your resolve and integrity from being here tonight speaks highly of you and everyone else in here. So you got to keep kicking and getting up and using some of the stuff. You're all going to fall, but it's who gets up. There is no one size fits all, and there is no just a simple answer to that, except to get up and keep going, especially if you've prepared yourself for the journey and those people before you made it a little bit easier, like the gentleman down in front of you now from the NAACP. I met him a few Saturdays ago, and those are the individuals that paved the way for you. So if you don't get up and keep going, you're doing a disservice. There's no answer.
I couldn't have said it better. Okay, I couldn't have said it better. The only thing I would add is, remember, there's something special about you. There's something unique that puts you in a unique, I don't know what it is. I don't know you well enough. You have to have something special that's what you promote. You make yourself unique, individual to wherever you're applying, and it'll work better. Thank you. Unfortunately, we are short on time. We got time. We're going to got 2 more questions. Like I said, this is going to be a 3-part conversation. So if we don't get it all in tonight, we will be back.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, first off, mine is kind of like a comment. I'd like to tie in a little bit of something that a lot of people said. First off, I'm going to tell the grown-up version of your story, young man. My name is D. Doc McClellan. I actually own the West Side Environmental Plan of Action Committee. I came here, sir, with a niche.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yes. I came to Peoria in 1999 with a niche. A little bit about my background. I have a bachelor's degree in Administration of Justice from Southern Illinois, 1986. I actually dropped out of high school to go to the Army in 1979, where I was an airborne paratrooper. After graduating from Southern Illinois, I went back to the Army as a commissioned officer. Again, I came to Peoria in 1999 with 3 children who would graduate from Washington Gifted School with a niche. The gentleman to your left can tell you what that niche subject was, because he was serving as well, let me back up and say this. I brought an idea that has generated $10 million since March 24, 2005, the day that I was arrested at the health department for asking why they hadn't addressed the issue that I had found this money for. I was Illinois Department of Public Health approved to provide training in the subject of lead abatement. The county actually provided that training through another trainer who wasn't familiar with the people that they were training. The county paid to have 120 people trained, 68 graduated, only 8 of them got work because everyone in the region will tell you, whites don't hire blacks around here. Again, $10 million economic development has come and gone. Now let me say this, regionally, if we go back to the original report, African Americans, worst city of the nation, if you go back and break that down regionally, if you don't include those other counties and bring that back to Peoria, that would make African Americans more than 9 times more likely to be arrested. Conversely, it would make African Americans less economically powerful if you did not dilute the sample. Now, I know you all, smart people, know what I'm talking about. I know it's come across your mind. But again, I trained people in here that were not Christians. I'm not a Christian myself. I'm a Nichiren Buddhist. It seems that religion plays a part, aside from race. And as a Buddhist, I have to look inside myself before I go forward and challenge anybody outside of myself.
In the interest of time, brother,
I would have to say that I had failed had I the record of those people on the board. But we appreciate you for coming out tonight, as I have. And lastly, the 1,800,000-pound gorilla that's in the room that hasn't been discussed is called African American young man. Who can reach these people? There are 5 people in this room who can bring 50 black boys, black men in this place tomorrow. Only 5. And to those first 4 rows of future law enforcement students, keep up the good work. It can be done. But I'm quick to point out that there are very few minority men in that group. Venceremos. For y'all that don't know, that means we shall overcome in Spanish.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'll be really quick. Thank you all for coming. I know you all have very busy schedules. But I wanted to talk about, I know we've been talking a lot about economics, so I've seen a major uprising of Arab-owned businesses in the black community. So these businesses are in the form of liquor stores or hair shops, or, I mean, they're selling fried chicken and knockoff clothes, and, you know, all of those types of things in the black community. But not only that, their prices are inflated. They're taking money from our community and not giving money back to the community. They're taking our money and then spending it on whatever it is they want to spend it on in their own communities. And so my question is this. I have a friend who has a felony. He wanted to start his own convenience store. He couldn't get a loan, so he raised all of his own money, however way he did it, found his location, did everything that he was supposed to do so that he could service the black community in the way that the Arabs are. And got to the liquor commission, and they told him, oh, you can't have a convenience store that sells liquor because of your felony past. So I'm trying to figure out how is this happening? How is it that today I can see a building that's empty, and then tomorrow it's a affluent Arab business, booming, people are in and out of it, and they're just setting up shop on every single corner in the South End or in low-income areas. However, if I go further north, I don't see any liquor stores. And the ones that I do see are in the form of another store that sells liquor. It's not the main portion of the store. So I'm trying to figure out, how is the city letting this be okay? Why is it okay for Arabs to come and set up shop in impoverished areas, take all of our money, invest it into their communities, but it's not okay for them to do that on the north end of Peoria?
Yes. Good question. Ain't gonna answer that. Ain't touching that. Everything's right around.
Well, to answer your question, the city doesn't have a policy or anything on, there's no no policy on when people come to apply for liquor license or to set up shop. It's whoever comes and they go through the process and it gets approved. You know, but the one that you're talking about, there's a state law that prohibits people with certain, who've been convicted of certain felonies from getting a liquor license. So that's probably, I don't know that for sure, but that's probably the reason why that liquor license was denied by the Liquor Commission.
But what I'm trying to figure out is why is it okay for all of these different liquor stores to exist in our areas, but they don't exist on the north end of Peoria? Go further out towards Delaware. I can't find a liquor store out here.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out what is going on. Like, is there some kind of meeting we need to hold? Is there some kind of notification that we should be getting that says, hey, such and such Abdul wants to...
You do get notifications within a certain distance of where the business or the application has been put through. They get sent directly to the houses and to the houses within a certain distance, and the businesses within a certain distance from where that site is that the application has been made for. And then there's also a public notice, I believe, that has to be posted at that location that tells the citizens when the liquor hearing is before the Liquor Commission for that application.
Okay, well, you guys are doing an awful job of doing that because I lived on 61605. I grew up in 61605 up until I was 18 years old, and I never once. I saw liquor stores popping up on every single corner when I used to walk to this school to go to school, and I not once saw anything in the mail that told me this store was supposed to be here. I'm sure if I asked my mom and my dad, they're going to say the same exact thing. So your process has to be better because it's not working the way that it is now. We cannot have, if we have an economic problem, we cannot have these foreign businesses coming and taking more resources from a community that already has an economic
If I could, and I'm not on the city council, but I want to, for some time, I've wanted to respond to some of what was said tonight by a number of individuals in the audience. And I want to try to quantify a couple of the things, a couple of the notes that I've been taking, and then try to dovetail that into the last question that you had. There was a young woman earlier, she indicated, what are you going to do? What are you going to do for us? You need to just do what you're supposed to do. And I would dare say, so that of the elected officials that are in the room, there's myself, there's Beth, and there's Denise. I cannot emphasize enough that if the approach is you do it and then tell us what you're going to do, you will lose that game every time. That's checkers. What happens in these institutions of government, in the institution of government, it's chess. So the only way that you get out of this process, what it is that you want, is that you must make demands of the process. We must make demands of the process. We must organize, we must dedicate our time and energy to figuring out what the solutions should be. We should not be asking anybody up here what our solutions are. We have more intellect in this community. We have enough individuals who understand what's going wrong. And so if we collectively come together and start putting our manpower together, because again, local elections affect far more of our lives than any presidential election ever will. So although those are the election cycles that get the most turnout, what we have to do is we have to begin to take our power back. And to your point about many of the individuals that come into our communities and they set up shop and they, provide hair and nails and chicken and liquor and all of these things that do not enhance our lives long term, you're absolutely right. They come into communities, they set up shop, they don't live there, their children don't go to school there, they don't give back to the local JFL team or the local community. Those dollars, the black dollar circulates less in the black community than any other community. If you go into Hispanic communities, you don't see soul food restaurants. No. You don't go to Chinatown and see R&B lounges. No. It doesn't happen. But again, what we have to realize is we have to begin to take our power back. And we have to begin to trust one another and work with each other. Because if your friend was not able to get a liquor license on his own, where was his friend who could have? Who he could have partnered with to go through that process. And what I will say is, these kinds of conversations are good, but the revolution will not be televised. The kind of work that has to be done cannot happen over the microphone, it will not happen in these kind of rooms. It has to be very quiet, it has to be very dedicated and directed. And so, I just want us to hopefully keep in mind that we have control over far more than we give ourselves credit for. And the sooner we understand that, the better our reality will be.
And as long as you continue to shop where you're disrespected,
But you're right.
Yeah, real quick question, and we.
It's a real quick comment, basically. A couple weeks ago, when I saw the #1 status in Peoria, now just all the elected city officials and government officials should be embarrassed. Should be embarrassed. Seriously, I mean, we come in here and we see #1, we went from 6 to #1. #1. And when I go around in the Peoria area and I see like people on the work crews, I see small people of color, it's embarrassing. When you talk about a little progress, you're not seeing a whole lot of progress. It's the same old thing. And you know it, it's the same thing. It gets old. And everybody's doing this here for everything, but they want to see you make a change. It needs to stop.
I got one more.
Hi, I graduated from Manual High School. My kids went here. I live in 61605. And the lack of respect for people of color in regards to policing, there has to be a change in that. It seems like we're getting stopped, pulled over, harassed. My son does not have a record. He's been pulled over 15 times from September until now. Never once given a ticket. You know, like, and it's all because he's driving while black. These things have to be addressed and changed, as well as all of the liquor stores, young men that can't have a job, that don't have jobs, they stand out in front of them, they gamble, they do things wrong. Then again, the policing comes into effect. Even the community here, all of us have to come together. We have to help some of these elected officials start and get back with the churches. The churches were very important in implementing, programs to help us to regain our power, to take back our communities, to make them great again. Where are the answers and solutions for that? That's what a lot of us in here are wanting to know, because we have to be treated with respect in regards to jobs, our children, our schools, in order to make progress. That's what a lot of people are here for, and those are the answers that we need, and it doesn't need to stop tonight. We need to keep going to make a difference, because as we see, there's empty lots, there's vacant houses, there's empty businesses, and we have to go out of our community to spend our money. So what are we going to do outside of this building? Not just the elected officials, all of us. What are we going to do, and how are we going to make that change?
We have, I promise, one last question. Quick question.
First of all, thank you everyone for coming out. I think y'all have been great, really trying to be intentional about attacking these issues, and so I appreciate the panel. I think one of the things I wanted to speak of was Alex Sierra's story. I felt that story should also be represented in the Journal-Star about the community. We were talking about things that we can do. I think stories like that, where you hear about young men from the community who are trying to do more than what we've been reading about, that these are the sorts of things that should come out. The one thing that I have for the city manager as well is, I felt the one time that the buck was being passed was about businesses that were doing work in the community and the fact that they're not hiring diverse staff. And I think that if we're the ones that are paying for those infrastructures and for the work that they're doing, that we should hold them accountable, and that was maybe the one area that was not acceptable. It felt like that was passing the dollar and saying, hey, because these companies are coming in, that they're the ones doing the hiring and it's not on us, but we're paying them, and how can we see and how can we measure and as a community see whether or not they are hiring diverse employees for projects that are being done in the city. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is that there's a lot of really great meetings, like Councilwoman Moore was saying, that are happening in the city. I find myself, and I'm pretty old, being one of the youngest individuals that are a part of these conversations that are happening. I really appreciated your question. It was really well thought out, and I bet there is a lot of great strategic decisions that we can be making as a community to stop poisonous businesses like that from being present consistently in our neighborhood and having more businesses that are being represented by people in our community. And I challenge the young men and women who are here right now to come find me afterwards, and I'm going to take your contact information and help you out to get involved with a lot of the groups that are meeting in these communities that are only being represented by our mothers, our fathers, and our grandfathers who are carrying the load for a lot of things that need to be done that require our young energy. I guess I really didn't have a question, but thank you for that time.
Thank you all for your patience for this very engaged, inspiring conversation. I believe I have an announcement, not a question, but an announcement.
I am Bernice Gordon-Young, the founder and president of It Takes a Village. I was not going to mention that, but since my mother did, there was a comment made earlier about this place should be filled. A lot of us have been to these. We've done it. And so after a while, you just get tired of meeting just to be meeting. And so that's where It Takes a Village came from. But I'm in a unique situation. I'm just going to say this and I won't expand on it. But I spent 20 years in a dual career as a 911 dispatcher, so I have the police insight, and also as a psychotherapist. They kind of go hand in hand, to be honest with you. And I just recognize there's a greater need. We really do have to go into action. And until we get this figured out collectively, I hope that everybody leaves here with something that they're going to do individually differently. Those phone calls do get made sometimes, but there's no action behind the phone call. You know, and so holding you accountable and also being respectful in the way that we treat each other. I'm going to say this. My mother mentioned that I bought a lot. That comes with privilege, and I recognize that. That comes through working hard and having an education, but everybody can't buy that lot. And the last thing I want to say, as far as It Takes a Village, it's in this school, the one that I graduated from in 1986. I don't live in this area anymore, but I live in the city. I care about this city. I care about the area. My mother lives in this area. And again, together we can. The doors to the store are open, so if you all would like to just browse or just check it out, please do. You really invest when you can see and when you can feel. And so again, I thank you all. I think you did a wonderful job. Thank you.
We've only scratched the surface. We have many more issues, conversations to have. Like I said, this is the beginning. We're hoping to have a series of these conversations with the intent of bringing about collective action and possibly change. It looks like Representative Booth have something more to say.
I do.
To close us out. All right.
There were a couple of the last two questions and comments in the audience. I wanted to. I don't want you to leave here without your question or issue being addressed. You talked about your son being stopped 15 times, but never being arrested or ticketed. It's interesting that you say that because May of 2015, I was a part of the negotiation for the body camera police community engagement law enforcement bill that we passed here in Illinois. And I went back to pull the data, and one of the things that some individuals don't like about this bill is the fact that the passage of this bill requires a large degree of data collection. And the reason why it's important to collect that data, although it may be troublesome, is because you can't do proper training without data. And so, to some specifics, one of the bullet points of this legislation is that it requires data collection on pedestrian stops, which results in an arrest, frisk, or search. So potentially what's happening is he's being stopped, but just coming short of an arrest, a frisk, or a search, therefore that data doesn't have to be collected. These are the kinds of important things that have to come out in these kinds of settings so that we can begin to take a much deeper look at what it is that we're doing from the policy side to create a much more comfortable, cohesive environment within the community. Because clearly if your son is stopped 15 times, something's going wrong. As a part of this legislation, one of the things that is also required is that anytime there are pedestrian stops, you have to record where that's happening, the race and ethnicity and the sex of that individual. So clearly over a large period of time, if we are recognizing, oh, well, these individuals on this side of town or this community or folks that look like this are consistently stopped, we know clearly that there's an issue. We know implicit biases are real. We all have them. And they have, and particularly when it comes to law enforcement and community, they have to be addressed. To the gentleman's point, he talks about the fact that elected officials taking a more active role as it relates to the things that come before us, and he's absolutely right. All the data that's been coming to us, whether it be the NRN study, the 24/7 Wall Street data, the articles that the Journal Star has been producing quarterly over the past year, it clearly shows that there are very distinct disparities within our communities. Even without the rally cry of the community, there are things that we should be doing literally with any and every work project that comes before us. For example, in 2 weeks in Springfield, there is this large energy bill. ComEd, Ameren, a bunch of different individuals are taking part in trying to pass this legislation. There is now this move to add in this clean jobs bill. Well, there was this larger community group talking about, well, we need a clean jobs bill because we need environmental justice in these communities. My question to them was, yes, we need environmental justice, but we also need economic justice. So what I'd like to see, and clearly if you live in a black or brown community, there's a very large degree that you are living under conditions that are subpar as it relates to environmental justice. My response to this group was, yes, this is important, but I also want to see the economic impact on the very individuals that are living in those conditions. How do they then get an opportunity to take part in the economic portion of that environment, of cleaning up that environmental injustice? And trust you me, it has been like HE double hockey sticks fighting to make sure that people that live in these communities are included on the jobs piece of this. So there was a meeting that was held about 4 months ago, and I believe that the meeting was held in order to try to influence me, and I got in front of all these people that wanted this bill, and I told them plain as day, there was no way that I was supporting the bill unless low-income communities had an opportunity to participate on the economic side of it, period. And those are the kinds of things, I really need to make that because that's really my job. I'm supposed to do that, right? I'm supposed to do that. And I do that without fanfare, without having to announce it, but I wanted to share that because all elected officials, particularly because we see this disparity, should be looking at everything that comes before us with that same kind of lens. How can we be more inclusive, not exclusive, how can we be more inclusive to people who clearly have been marginalized and shut out?
Thank you. Thank you. And on behalf of Illinois Central College and the Peoria Public School System, I thank you for your time, your attention, and we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to continue to engage these issues until we begin to see some change. So thank you. Thank the panel. Thank all those who shared the message on Facebook and social media. And thank you for coming out.